Hi guys, it's Emily. Welcome back to my channel. Okay, so yesterday I attempted to start constructing the spines on these glue books, and I was recording and everything, and quickly realized the weirdest thing. My Fabri-Tac would not hold anything. Paper, fabric, anything. It was acting like, just water. I mean, it wasn't holding anything. I have no idea why. These were not like brand new bottles that I had just opened. It was two different, I was trying two different bottles that have been open and that I've been using. They're not old or anything like that. I have no idea what was going on, but I was able to just literally peel the fabric off of the chipboard, the books, everything. It wasn't holding paper to anything. It was the most bizarre thing I have ever encountered. And after trying and trying and trying to figure out what was going on, I decided to just scrap that video because I was getting really frustrated and, angry and everything else that would go along with something like that I'm sure you would all understand, but nobody wants to watch an angry woman, crafting. So I just decided, let's just forget it. I have, 9 of these to do. I have plenty of examples. So what I ended up with, because this was the one that I was, working on in the video, it's very pretty, but I'm just angry at it because of the amount of work I had to go to get, to get this put together. I ended up adding, I kept like trying different things, but I had already done things, so it's fine now, it'll work, but man, was it a struggle. It was a struggle, but I think it's going to be okay. Anyway, I'm just going to sit this aside because I really don't want to look at it right now. And we're just going to continue on with this one because you've seen it multiple times. We might as well just continue, right? Okay, so I need to remember all the things that I told you in the last video, so we don't miss anything. So I think after we repaired this cover because I had destroyed the back cover, if you remember. And okay, so the next step, after you have gutted your book and, neatened up your edges, the next step is to measure your book. And I did do this on camera, but it's already done. So I'll just, tell you what I did. So what I do is I start off and I measure just the cover, the entire structure of the cover. So for this example, I got 11 1/8 inches tall and 8 1/4 inches wide. Okay. And I marked it cover because I'm going to have multiple measurements and I don't want to get confused because that happens. So after I do that, I determine what size my largest pages can be to fit in here properly, right? So I figure out a folded dimension and an unfolded dimension. So if I'm piecing together, papers, I know how big they need to be, or if I'm, just using pages that I have already and I'm folding them, I can determine, if it's going to fit. So what I do to get those measurements is I simply subtract 1/4 inch from each dimension. So I end up with 10 7/8 for the height max and 8 inches for the width max. Okay. And then what I just simply, obviously the 10 7/8 is going to stay the same when it's unfolded because that's the height. And then I just double the width. And then I have this sticky noted inside each book cover, and I won't, have to keep measuring every time I'm, working on finding pages to go inside. So that helps me out tremendously. Obviously, if you're just doing one, you might, remember. I still write it down because I always forget. So I'm getting a really bad shadow and I'm really sorry. I'm not sure where it's coming from. All right, so then after you have your measurements, you can cut your spine, or in my case, spines. I used a really thick, it's like a mat board in the framing section at Hobby Lobby. It comes in a ginormous sheet. I won't buy it like that again because in its original huge form, I mean, I think it was like either it was probably 3 by 4 feet. It's way too hard for me to work with. I don't have a table big enough, and to cut that down, it was kind of a nightmare. However, it is really nice because it is, really thick. I want to say it's probably about 1/8 of an inch. Yep. So now that I have smaller pieces, I'm just kind of using it up. But I did have a lot of waste because trying to cut it, it was just kind of a nightmare. Anyway, these I had to do by hand. The method I used in the very first video in this series for trimming the spine off of the book covers, the one I showed you that did not involve the paper cutter. So basically a rotary tool and a metal straight edge, and I had to trim all these down. So they are all 3 inches wide. And then they are all varying heights. And as you can see, I wrote them so I don't have to measure them again. So as I was cutting them, I was writing down the measurements. So I can easily look at my cover and say, okay, so this is 11 1/8 inches tall. So I need an 11 1/8 inches tall spine. So there's my spine. Really simple, especially if you're doing more than one, because, it's likely you're gonna forget, or you're just gonna have to keep measuring, and that's just annoying and takes up time. So I have all my spines cut and all of my measurements done. And so the next part is to start just putting together your actual book and creating the actual cover with the pieces that you have cut out. So yeah, I am using various items. I did a few yesterday with the defective Fabri-Tac, and I'm confident that they're gonna stay together at this point, but I'm not using that Fabri-Tac anymore. I gave up. I haven't put it in the trash yet because it hurts my soul to do that, but I'm not gonna use it. So it's just sitting there mocking me at the moment. I had purchased a clearance bottle of Fabri-Fix. It's by the same company as Fabri-Tac a while ago. And I had it, just in my stash. So I have already used it today on another cover just to make sure that it wasn't, that I wasn't in some sort of like alternate dimension where Fabri-Tac is the opposite as it is in our dimension. Before I started filming and it seemed to be fine. So we'll see now that the camera's on. I'm telling you, I was so frustrated yesterday. I didn't even know what to do because I don't have anything else that works the same, right? We're all kind of dependent on this stuff when it doesn't work. What do you do? All right, but I've done a couple different things, mostly fabric. But I did do, one of the covers I used wallpaper, and maybe, we'll see, maybe I will show you how I did that with wallpaper. But honestly, it's the exact same process, whether you use fabric or wallpaper, or you could use just cardstock, but I highly, highly recommend sandwiching some like Tyvek or, some other form of material that won't tear over time in between your cardstock. Otherwise, it's not going to hold up as well. Yeah. Okay. So now that we have everything cut here, I have chosen a fabric. that I like for this book, because I think first of all, it has the orange in it, which I like, and it just reminds me of yarn balls that, you know, cats would like to play with. So I'm gonna go with this. Oh my goodness, where I've got glares and shadows. All right, maybe that's better. Okay, so the first thing I need to determine is what width fabric I need. Now, we don't want to cover, well, we want to cover as little as, you know, humanly possible of the actual image on the cover. So I definitely don't want it to be more than an inch, but I'm probably going to go with 3/4 of an inch of coverage on the actual front and back covers. So let me get a piece of paper and I'll write this down so you can see my thought process. So let me find something dark to write with. All right, so this is how I determine the width of the fabric that I need. Okay, so I determined that I'm gonna have 3/4 of an inch on the front cover and 3/4 of an inch on the back cover. And because it's easier for me to do the math, just make sure you can actually see that, I add as I go. So, and I don't necessarily write this down, but so 3/4 of an inch and 3/4 of an inch is 1.5 inches of fabric so far. Okay, hopefully you can see that. All right, and then I know that this piece is 3 inches, right? Because we cut them all to 3 inches. So my 3-inch spine added to that 1.5 inches gives us 4.5 inches of fabric, okay, at this point. Now that would be perfect if you were just gonna butt them up, you know, to each other like this, but we don't wanna do that because you won't be able to open and close the book properly. It'll just be way too tight and nothing's gonna move. So we need to leave a gap in between each of the covers and the spine piece in the middle, okay? And I usually leave however wide my piece of spine is, which we already determined is 1/8 of an inch. So I leave 1/8 of an inch on either side in between the covers and the spine piece. So 1/8 of an inch here and 1/8 of an inch here is a total of 1/4 of an inch. So we're gonna add 1/4 inch gap spaces, right? Total. So 1/8 of an and 1/8. And that gives us a total of 4 3/4 inches of fabric. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So basically your math might be different than mine because it depends on how much overlap you want on your covers. It depends on how thick your, or how wide you make your spine, how big of a gap you need in between, that kind of thing. But for this particular example, this is my math and my process. I hope it was kind of helpful. So I need 4 3/4 inches of fabric. So, all right, I can set that aside. I'm gonna move this out of the way and I'm gonna use my, my mat here to determine where I need to tear the other side of my fabric. So I'm lining it up with a vertical, you know, inch line. In this particular case, I'm lining it up with the 7-inch line. So I just need to count over 4 3/4 inches. So we have these are each a half. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this would be 5. So, you know, approximately in between here and here. And obviously, you know, it's not a science. And then I already checked ahead of time. This should tear nicely. We'll see, hopefully. All right, there we go. So that was probably a little loud. I apologize. But I really hate trying to cut fabric straight in a straight line. Whoops. I'm not good at it at all. I can't seem to find a technique that works for me. So, but this worked perfectly. So this is just some upholstery fabric samples, honestly. I was lucky enough to meet a lady who had been collecting upholstery fabric samples for a really long time. And I took everything she had, and now I have a lot of different colors and styles and that kind of thing. So I was very blessed to find her and to be able to use it, because she was going to throw it away. Or, you know, try to find someone else who could take it. But all right. Now we have our piece, and I'm not worried too much about the excess length, but I do want to make sure that we have enough, because I want to wrap this around the inside as well. Okay. And we're fine. We actually, you know, we have more than we need here. So you can go ahead and do this ahead of time if you want. You don't have to. I do it both ways. Sometimes I do it ahead of time, and sometimes I just wait until I've got everything, you know, glued, and then I cut it. But we can kind of look here and see where our overlap is. And I'm just going to cut like right here. And then that should be fine. All right. So now we're just ready to glue. And this is where everything went horribly wrong yesterday. So I'm kind of having a panic attack that it's going to happen again. But I'm also hopeful that it can't possibly be every bottle of Beacon adhesive that I own. So it had to have been a fluke. Okay. So what I do first is I go ahead and glue the spine piece down, because I find if I have that where, you know, in the center, I can very easily, you know, glue the covers then. Okay. So I'm going to use my Fabrifix. And I will say that this behaves very much like Fabri-Tac. So if you've never used this product before and you see it, like I bought it simply because it was on clearance at Hobby Lobby, and I think they made a mistake. But I got it for like, it was under $4. And I was like, well, I don't care if it's exactly the same or not. I'll use it for something, right? You know, when you get a deal like that. So because it's normally like $12 or $13, you know, so I picked it up and I hadn't used it before. So if you see it and you see it for a deal, or it's the only thing you can find, sometimes they're out of Fabri-Tac, but they'll have this, give it a try. Cause I don't find it to be, just a little bit that I've used it today. I feel like it works very similarly. Okay. Now, this is fairly thick fabric, and I'm not worried too much about it going, you know, seeping through, but I'm just going to kind of, you know, lightly run my finger over the glue and make sure I don't have really large globs that, you know, might show through. And I think that'll be fine. And then I just want to center it as best as I can. And I don't push too hard at the beginning, just again to kind of keep the glue from seeping through, because nothing is more frustrating. Well, okay, the glue not working is very frustrating, but if you can get the glue to work, it is very frustrating to have it seep through because you can't do anything about it once that happens. So just lightly run over it with your hands and make sure that it's, you know, there aren't any bubbles or anything like that, but just a very light pressure. And then as it dries, you can push a little harder because it won't, you know, once it starts to dry, it won't seep through as much. So, okay. Oh, this is going so much better. Yay. Oh, you just would not even believe. I can't even explain to you how absolutely messed up this was yesterday. All right. So now we just need to attach our front and back covers and make sure that we leave that gap. So what I do is I lay this down, obviously upside down, because I want to know how far I need to add the glue. And this really does help in that regard. And you can always, like, if you're not sure about that spacing, just use your book as a guide. So lay it up against your spine and then lay it down. It's not an exact science, but it'll help. And you just want to make sure you have some sort of a gap. Okay, so then I can just run my glue along here. And now that I've done this, I just had a horrible thought. Okay, no, it's right. Okay. Whew. Ah, that was scary. All right. I thought I had it turned the wrong way so that the glue was on the wrong side. And there we go. I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the spine piece, and I'm just going to kind of smush the glue down with my finger. And I go towards the spine when I do this. I think I'm getting my sleeve in it. That way you don't get any seeping out where you don't want it on your cover. All right. And then just check that spacing again. Make sure that everything is lined up. Make sure I'm in frame so you can see what I'm doing. And here we go. Just lightly press that down at first. And then you can very carefully flip the whole thing over and lightly press your fabric down. And that is working very well. Honestly, I feel like the Fabrifix might seep less than the Fabri-Tac because yeah, I'm not getting any. And I usually, even when I'm being careful, there's some, right? I mean, it's never perfect, but this is nice. Okay. Now I'm gonna check that it's holding only because of yesterday. Yes, we are good to go. All right. Now we can do the front cover the same way. Okay. So I lay it down like this so I can determine where my glue will go. Again, just kind of wipe it towards the spine side. Make sure there aren't any lump pieces. And then line it up like that. carefully lift the whole thing and flip it over here, and then just push your fabric down. There. Oh, I'm very happy with that. Okay, then we need to do the inside. Move this over a bit. Okay, and this is, you know, same thing. We're gonna just, I'm gonna bring this one down and then put this one over top, I think. It doesn't matter, either way. And for this, I do the same thing, but I just do half at a time. So this comes to about here and about there. And again, I will make sure that there aren't any big lumps of glue. And then just carefully fold that over and lightly press that down. Now, before it gets too dry, before the glue, you know, gets too dry, you want to very gently run a bone folder or your fingernail or something into that gap you left between the spine and the cover, so that it will open and close properly for you. And you can, you know, you can test it a bit, but I would wait until it's good and dry before you really start messing with it too much. And as you can see here, the embroidery goes right into that gap, which, you know, if I would have thought it through, I might have not done that, but it'll be fine. I don't think it's going to cause too much of a problem. All right. And then we'll just do the same thing down here. So just make sure that we line it up. And you can use the upper piece as a guide for your glue too. Sorry about that. I had an alarm set on my phone that I forgot about, and when it went off, it stopped recording. So I was in the middle of gluing this down and I couldn't stop. So I just had to finish it before I figured out the whole camera thing again. So sorry, but I just did the same thing that I did up here. And I need to add a little more glue to this corner here, possibly over here, because it's just flopping a little bit. And the way I do that is I add the glue to my finger so that I don't get too much. And then I just kind of add it like that. There we go. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and work on just getting that crease there. yeah, it's perfect. All right, so there is our spine. So cute. I like how that ended up on the edge there. And everything is holding. Oh, yay. It's a happy day. Okay, so that's all there is to that. It's fairly simple when your glue actually works. So I think this was getting, you know, I don't know. We were in the 20 to 30 minute range, I believe, before my alarm went off. So I think I'm going to stop there. I'll show you the one that I did it with wallpaper, and that way you can just kind of see what it looks like. All right, I did it a little bit differently, just because my piece of wallpaper was not long enough to fully cover the inside. So I'll show you what I did. So the same technique basically as the fabric. You can see here where I did fold the wallpaper over, but it only went to like right here. So I had kind of this ugly, you know, blank space. So I added a piece of fabric over that, over the inside, and then I wrapped my spine in the wallpaper, glued that over top of the fabric. I didn't like how the fabric looked on, you know, I could have just left it the way it was, but I didn't like the way the fabric looked overlapping here. It just didn't, I don't know, the fabric wasn't wide enough to cover where the wallpaper, you know, overlapped here and here. So I had this, these Paper Studio rolls of paper. I just added this globe one to each side. So it just kind of covered up the part I didn't like. So anyway, you could do it the exact same way that I did the fabric if your wallpaper piece is long enough to meet in the middle. Does that make sense? I just kind of had to improvise because these books are so large, and you know, the wallpaper just wasn't long enough. I realized that I need some glue here. Let me just do that while I'm talking. So yeah, anyway, that's what that looks like. And I think I have 4 more to do. So I'm going to do those off camera, and then I will come back with the next step, which will be to start putting the signatures together. So this is exciting. I'm hopeful that I will get this accomplished in the 2 weeks that I have to do it. Actually, my kids are coming into town next weekend, so I really don't even have 2 weeks, but I know they have a lot of stuff going on with friends and stuff while they're here, so I know I'll have some time to work, but I'd like to get at least one completely done before they get here so that I can finish this video series and I don't have to necessarily film while they're in town. So that's my plan. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, anyway, I hope that was helpful. I'm in a much better mood today than I was yesterday, and I'm just going to continue working, and I'll be back soon, guys. I hope you have a fabulous day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.